This is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy, and today we're going to review the Audit the Audit's new book. It's called The Civilian Rights Handguide. There you go. Just came out. And if you're familiar with Audit the Audit, he analyzes police encounters. He does legal analysis on police encounters, and I think it's worthwhile for you to pick up his book. Again, it's the Civil Rights Handguide by John Lang, Lang. And so I read it this weekend, and so I thought I'd give you a review. Basically, if you've watched a lot of the Audit's YouTube videos, you'll be familiar with a lot of this material. But what it does is it summarizes it, and it provides an index on basic topics, so you can basically use it as a reference guide. What I particularly like was his review of the various amendments to the Constitution and how they pertain to police interactions. So he goes through the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, and the 18th Amendment, and it relays how they're relevant to this. I also suggest that you pick up this, if you can see it. It's I bought it from Amazon. It's a little booklet, The Constitution of the United States. I think you can buy like 25 of these things for like $20 on Amazon. But anyway, it's got the amendments and it's got the Declaration of Independence, and but it's just good for the amendments. And it's just a little pocket guide. I hand them out on occasion. And anyway, but also what I liked about the book was its discussion of Pennsylvania versus Mims and Terry versus Ohio. And, you hear those things mentioned all the time, pretty regularly as it pertains to police interactions. And but you really need to actually read the case to understand what's going on. Because there's a lot of stuff going on there. So we'll talk about Pennsylvania versus Mims first. That basically pertains to whether or not when a cop orders you out of the car, bottom line is you just need to get out of the car. I think that's the gist of the matter. Whether you're the driver or whether you're a passenger, you got to get out. Now, Thurgood Marshall, I believe it was one of the dissenting opinions on that case. And basically, he thought it gave the police too much power. And they talked about, how many cops are actually shot at police vehicle stops. And he determined that under that exact circumstance, it's very few. But the potential abuses that can come out of dragging people out of a car, just on a hunch or for whatever reason, is very. It was concerning to him, and it's concerning to me, and so the police like to cite Pennsylvania versus Mims as their authority to do that. But I think you need to remember there are three dissenting opinions, including Thurgood Marshall, one of the biggest names in the Supreme Court, he did not approve, but bottom line is, at this juncture, it would be advisable to get out of the damn car if they tell you to get out of the car. But to me, it's an overstep of the judiciary. Providing police powers to basically control the population, and they have to create a balance to allow the police to do their jobs. But many say that they may have gone too far in this regard. It essentially turns it into a police state. And what concerns me is that they can pull you out of the car for any darn reason. And more than likely they're going to get rough with you. And when you're getting older like myself, I don't appreciate getting roughed up for no reason. But My personal opinion is that just like reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime, they need to have reasonable articulable justification for ordering you out of the car. That's my opinion. But anyway, get out of the car at this juncture. But as far as Terry versus Ohio, that was a case that pertained to, and again, he reviews all this in the book. And also you need to, you just go to Google. Just go to Google and just search Terry versus Ohio or Pennsylvania versus Mims and read the case. But also, read the dissents. It's extremely important to read the dissents because not all the justices agree, and at some point in time, Pennsylvania versus Mims may get reversed as it pertains to specific circumstance. But anyway, again, on to Terry versus Ohio. Basically, what that established was is that they need reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime to detain you. And if they detain you, they can frisk you. They can't go into your pockets, but they can frisk you. But if they frisk you and they feel something that feels like a gun or other contraband drugs, then they can go into your pockets. And in that specific case, it was a 30-year police officer, and he'd been watching these three fellows who appeared to be staking out a business to rob, and so he spent a good amount of time watching these people, and the courts determined that he had reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime, that they were casing out a specific property to rob. And so he went and he detained them and he frisked them and he found a gun, and then he arrested him for that. So the gun wasn't necessarily related to the specific crime that he was suspected of, but anything that they find that is illegal, they have the justification to do so. So even if they suspect you of a different crime, if they find a crime in the course of looking into the initial crime, well, they can charge you for that. And one of the dissenting opinions was, I think the judge's name was Douglas. He felt that that this gave the police more power than a magistrate, and he didn't think that was appropriate because magistrates require probable cause, which is a higher standard than reasonable articulable suspicion. And so they have to have reasonable articulable suspicion to detain you and to frisk you. But at that junction, it would depend on what state that you're in. They have various stop and identify states. I believe New York is one of them. And I'd have to look at the map. There's a map of it in this book as well that tells you which states are stop and ID. And apparently, if they have reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime in a stop and ID state, they can require your identification under threat of arrest. But they have to have reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime. They can't just demand it because they're investigating. They have to have reasonable articulable suspicion of a specific crime. And so, again, I suggest you read, just Google Terry versus Ohio and read the decision and read the dissents. And it's pretty interesting stuff. I can have more. I don't know if I agree with the stop and ID states. I think that there needs to be more, but if they can articulate it, and it can't just be a nod and a wink. This is where the courts need to, protect the public from, disingenuous nonsense that tends to transpire. So again, this particular case, Terry versus Ohio, gives the police, more authority to be, checking people out. And so, I think you should read it periodically because it might have new meaning to you, over time. So just Google Terry versus Ohio, Pennsylvania versus Mims. Read them carefully. Read the dissents. Pretty interesting stuff. As far as the rest of the book is concerned, you can, it's only 237 pages and it's pretty large print and it's a small format book. So it won't take you that long to read the whole thing. So I would suggest reading the whole thing and then using it as a reference. There's an index, and so you can quickly get to the sections that are relevant to you. But I highly recommend that you subscribe to Audit the Audit. I highly recommend that you buy his book. I've watched a lot of his videos, so I was very familiar with the contents of this book ahead of time. But it still kind of summarizes it, and it really brought those two cases into context for me. Those two are very extremely important, and it gives you a kind of the mindset of where our judiciary is at. They to me, they stray from the original intent of the Constitution to societal control, and perhaps that they're overdoing it a little bit. But those cases were done in the 1960s, and maybe the times had some impact as to their determinations. But I think particularly Pennsylvania versus Mims needs to be revisited. But again, the Civilian Handwrites Handbook by John Lang, and you can get it on Amazon.com for $19.99 as a hardcover, and like $15 for a paperback. This is Mike Frank. Oh, by the way, I think this would be a nice stocking stuffer for the Oswego County Sheriff, for Deputy Gregory, and Supervising Deputy Praetor. I think that if they read this up, it might lengthen their careers. This is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy.